Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, Executing Strategy in the New Normal, the increasing need to succeed in strategy execution and thrive through disruption. Really interesting topic for us today. I'm excited to introduce our speaker in just a moment. First, let's talk about just a few setup items. Our purpose, again, is to share knowledge and trending on what's happening in the strategy vertical. Ulf, I'm sure you'll add a whole bunch of things to expand upon not just what's happening, but how to do it correctly. So we'll get to that shortly too, which is the exciting part of our discussion today. Please feel free to write your questions in the Q&A section. Our goal is to answer all questions at the close of the presentation. If we can't get to all of them in our time together today, we will follow up via email with you afterwards. Materials. I always say, yes, this entire webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to this when the webinar is done in just a few days, as well as the ability to download the presentation deck in a separate file, which you'll see that Ulf will go through for our time together today. And also for IBDC.D certification holders, you will receive 1 CPE credit by attending today's webinar. Just be sure to follow the proper CPE credit submission guidelines. And with that, let's get started. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome our esteemed guest today, Ulf Arnetz, the CEO, founder, and chairman of Howie Technologies. Ulf has had so many things. I had to really, Ulf, narrow this down to just, you have so many things to talk about in your background. So hopefully I picked the best ones here to talk about. So serial entrepreneur, founded and grew many companies in numerous countries and regions, completed 4 strategic exits. I'm sure that that is a whole topic for another webinar that we could host on just that process alone. And also sold your latest company to NASDAQ listed OpenText in 2004. You've served on numerous boards listed here. Also want to say you and your organization have worked with countless CEOs and boards as it relates to strategy and proper execution. I'm really excited to talk with you about that today. And under Ulf's leadership, Howie Technologies acceleration software has become one of the leaders within the strategy and business plan execution arena. Ulf, it is an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. I, as well as many who are joining, have voiced that they're extremely excited about this webinar. And it's great to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mark, and welcome everyone to this seminar about executing strategy in the new normal. The increasing need to succeed in strategy execution and thrive through disruption. I would talk about 3 pieces very much: the challenge and how the market is today, and actually how it has been the last 10 or 30 years, and also new type of methodologies or thoughts about how you can accelerate the strategy execution, and also new trends when it comes to products for strategy execution. So this is the fact, and I'm quite bored actually because I'm very interested in this, of course, but it have looked like this for many, many years. So 92% of organizations don't track the strategy execution performance. And 90% of organizations fail to implement the strategy in time, or at least on time. And 89% of organizations don't have an application for effective strategy execution. What's a little bit interesting here is that the strategy is normally including what's most important for the company, which normally is improved shareholder value, increased revenue, and increased profit. And what is the CEO measured on, or board? What is that? So it's a little bit strange, actually, that these numbers have been very much the same for the last 10 or 20 years. And today, it's less than 5% of the CEOs using a strategy acceleration execution product in order to make sure that the execution really happens. So a lot of work is put into the strategy, but not so much to the execution. And I normally compare this a little bit with a CFO for a company. So if the CFO didn't have a financial application or didn't use the financial application or let IT choose the cheapest financial application, that would probably not work. So what's the problem? It's a lot of things going on in the market. It's a billion industry, change management, transformation, digital transformation. You can see all these nice words here, but that have been the case for the last 20 years at least. And you have seen the results from this on the last slide. So this is a company which have decided the strategy, the white flag over there to the right, and they start to execute according to the strategy. So they do the strategy execution, but something happens, disruption comes up, which could be, something that happens internally, but especially externally, new competition, a war, energy problems, interest goes up, changing from growth to profit growth, whatever it could be. What happens then in many cases is that the whole strategy, the strategy execution stops. And a lot of different opinions or different choices are coming up, but nothing happens. But the right way to do it, and I would talk about that today, is to actually create a new most important goal, new initiatives that are needed, and make sure that the whole organization is actually doing the activities that are needed in order to support those initiatives in order to reach the financial goals. Later on in this presentation, I will show you that if you have an application for this, an enterprise execution application, you could get the whole organization, even if it's a large organization, to do this change over here within 2 weeks, like here, 2 weeks. And then you get all the employees and managers to focus on what's most important based on this disruption. And if you don't have an application or are working more old-fashioned, this could take months and sometimes a year to get this behavior change that is needed in the organization. MIT did a survey on about 800 companies a couple of years ago, and they interviewed the executives, and they asked them, could you mention the 3 most important initiatives that you're focusing on in the company? And just, the initiatives could be mergers, it could be new markets, new products, new services, whatever is needed in order to improve the company and revenue and profit according to the strategy. And only 51% could mention the 3 most important initiatives, even though they have actually participated in a decision to what they have to do. And of course, if you get further out in the organization, this survey showed that it's only about 20% in the middle management level that could mention those initiatives. And when you get down to the employees, it was only 13% that could mention what the company is focusing on, which initiatives do we really need to improve, which means which activities do I have to improve and do more of in order to support those initiatives, because those initiatives will support increased revenue and profit according to the strategy. What's interesting here is that 82% of all employees, according to the same survey, says they would like to help the company and contribute in order to help the company to reach its goals and the new strategic position. We are doing something which is called the assessment test. It's a test we're doing to CEOs, presidents, large profit and loss owners, typical our customers. And when I'm saying the CEO during this seminar, all the time I'm saying the CEO, but what I really mean is the CEO, the president, the COO, someone who's a business unit manager with a large profit and loss, just so you know, but I'm using the word CEO. So anyhow, this test includes some questions. It's also based on research from MIT, from McKinsey, and from Gartner. So we have reference data. We asked them 32 questions, and they just have to answer, I strongly disagree, I disagree, I agree, I strongly agree. On the question, we have done this, hundreds of times. On the question directly to the CEO, I have a clearly defined strategy. The average is 85%. So 85% in average is, how good it is. 100% should, of course, be even better. When it comes to we agree on priorities in the strategy, it's a little bit less, it's 70%. What's interesting there when we do this assessment test is that we have research from external data from a lot of research, not coming from us, showing that's only 50%. So it's like 50% agree to the priorities, and 50% is actually fighting against. I'm satisfied with how my management team are driving our prioritized areas within their respective functions. It's 53%. It's half of the company. So the other half is not so good. And then it gets like this. But what this shows is that very few of the strategic initiatives that we have decided on in the executive team, so on the top with the CEO and the executive team, about 20% of those initiatives are actually going to happen and be realized in real life. So it's a lot of decisions on the top, but when it gets to reaching the employees, changing behavior, make sure that more people are doing more correct activities supporting the initiatives, it's only 20%. This is a little bit sad because if we look into strategy execution or all companies, you have quite a few employees up here and you have many employees down here. And of course, the whole strategy execution, improvement of the company, making sure that something happens is coming from the employees. So it's when the employees starts to do more correct activities that are needed to support the initiatives. And when those initiatives starts to move, make progress, that's when you get increased revenue and profit according to the strategy. So this is very much our experience after many, many years in this industry. So 80% of strategic initiative fail in execution. Once again, not coming from us, that's just the fact. So why? 34% fail to narrow down to few or clear prioritizations. Of course, on the top level in the executive team, you have to make decisions. What's most important? Everything can't be important. You can't have too much to focus on because then nothing gets done. You saw the last slide with 20%. You have to make your prioritization, and that prioritization should be based on shareholder value, money, and calendar time or timeline. 31% fail to steer on lead measures, so they are more measuring the outcome, but they don't have a way to measure the activities and the lead was actually generate the increased revenue and profit. And 26% fail based on that they can't create accountability, they can't get this culture where people take responsibility and make progress and feels accountable for whatever they need to do. It's a quite simple methodology in order to solve this. First of all, you need to prioritize and align, as you can see to the left. Then you need to steer and measure the initiatives and especially the activities. And then you need to have a culture where you commit and where you could visualize, so you actually feel involved in how the improvements are going. So we look into, let's say, I'll just do like this. If you look into typical for a strategy and the strategy execution, so the strategy normally includes that we need to do some sort of new business or different business, and the gray here is just the ongoing business, what we're doing all the time. So this is the day-to-day type of work, and that will very much grow or decrease according to the economy. But this part is what we have decided we need to do in the strategy, and maybe here over here to the right is 3 or 4 years from now, and we are here today. So what we need to do is to not just look after 3 or 4 years, because the fact is that many companies, they just do this for 1 or 2 years, then they change the strategy. So what we need to do is to focus much more down here. So you can see that most companies are focusing here instead of focusing on what they could have an impact on today or this week, or at least this year. The problem is also that people are working on the day-to-day. They're already stressed. They normally make their money, and how they are measured is normally around this day-to-day type of work. They are normally reacting instead of being in a proactive situation. So it's a problem to get people to really focus on whatever needs to be done here. And this type of is more that we do it next week or maybe next month. So that's a serious problem. One way to solve this then is to not just focus on what we should achieve in 3 or 4 years. It's actually to do the business plan, and the business plan must be focused on the next 6 to 12 months, a very short time perspective. And when that is done, it's quite common that it's a clear output, like we need to increase revenue or profit or whatever it is, but it's not clear on, you know, what input do we need in order to reach this portion here. And once again, what you're looking on here is, you know, new initiatives. We need maybe slightly change in the market. We may need new services, new products, new countries or whatever. So this is new business or new behaviors that adds up to the budget we already have. And the third problem is when we have decided something for the next 6 to 12 months, how could we get this further out in the organization? How could we get people motivated? And how can we make sure that people are actually taking their time to focus on those activities and initiatives that are needed? The solution then is, once again, to prioritize and align. So decide the most important goals. And the most important goals is the number one mistake many are doing, because they need to be according to the strategy. And in most cases, the strategy is saying that we need some slight change, how the market is viewing us, but it's always increased revenue and increased profit before a date, before 3 years or 4 years. Other type of important goals, they are important, but they are not the most important goals. Then we need to define the initiatives that are needed in order to support those financial goals up here. And then we also need to define the activities that are needed in order to have an impact on those initiatives. Then we need this commit and visualize type of engagement in the organization. So this is actually happening week after week in the organization, and people really release time also to do what's needed in the business plan up here for this, not only what they are doing on a daily basis, the day-to-day type of work. So we need some way of getting that culture, the commit culture in the organization. So as we said before, I have a clearly defined strategy, as you could see before, was the average answer on the assessment test. And normally it's very clearly defined that we should increase revenue. Once again, revenue coming from this type of new business or the strategy. And we should increase profit based on this as well. And based on how the market have changed, we have seen in the assessment test done the last year that, of course, nowadays it's a much bigger focus on profitable growth. Then we come to accelerate the key activities or the initiatives. So this is more how clearly is it defined? Is, you know, how understandable is it what I'm supposed to do? And then if we look into the initiatives, and once again, the initiatives are, if they are moving faster or actually we're making progress, then we could be sure that that will have a financial impact on the most important goals. And if you look on the initiatives here, it's very clear. Inflation clause, the time frame should be fixed within 6 months. How much money do we save on that? It's 12 million. And who is responsible for this is also clear. How many people are involved in this behavior change and change to do those activities? So everything here is very clear what should be done in order to support the financial goal. Unfortunately, we find it's very common that it looks like this. So we should go for growth. That's not really an initiative. We should have a better frontline focus. We should be a learning organization, etc., etc. That is not actionable and that is not measurable. So that's not really initiatives. Or we could find this one as well, which is also common, and that is more that, you know, we're going to be #1 in 5 years from now. So this one shows a good example on the top. And then something which is not so good, but it's actually something to start from. And but both the last two ones will of course fail with their execution, because if the initiatives are not clear, then the people, the managers and the employees don't know which activities they should focus on in order to improve those initiatives. So what happens then is that it was not so clear, actually. So you have a gap, which we always find. So this is the revenue growth they wanted to have, but they only have identified initiatives that covers 39% of that revenue growth. And in this case, it's different for different customers, of course. They have only identified 25% of what's needed in order to reach the financial goals. So once again, the initiatives here are lacking. And if the initiatives and the management have not made decisions about those, then it's impossible for middle management and the employees to focus on the correct activities that are needed in order to accelerate those initiatives. And if that happened, that would have had an impact on increased revenue and profit. So this is actually also aligned with the research from Gartner, McKinsey, and MIT. So it's about 32%. So you can see we have 39% here and 25% here, but normally 32% is covered of what's needed to be covered when it comes to the initiatives. So how do we solve this? First of all, decide the most important goals, which we talked about here. And the most important goals is typical OKR. We should increase revenue from X to Y before date Z, or profit, or whatever it could be. But it's something that is measurable and normally revenue and profit. And if this is, let's say that this is 4 years, it's very important to break this down in the business plan, as I showed before. So what we are looking on here should actually be something which is 12 months. So we stress the organization to be focused on here and now, not where we should be in 3 or 4 years from now. When we have done this, then we need to do the initiatives that are needed in order to get this increased profit or revenue. So are just some example of the initiatives. And the way to do that is to work with sprints or call it to-dos if you want. But you need to start from the top, what we agreed on, and then do this different type of sprints. And the way it works is that if something should be done here in Q4, what should then be done before that in Q3? What should be done before that in Q2? So you want to come to this week or next week. So you could do this is per month, but it could be per quarter. And you do this for all needed sprints, and each role on each level is doing it on their level. Then, of course, this is going further out in the whole organization. So if you do this correct, and this is more and more common, regardless if it's coming from us or someone else, is some sort of improved prioritization and alignment session. If you do this correct, of course, everyone in the executive team will know what we are focusing on, and they will actually see it on some sort of applications as well on a daily or weekly basis. You will steer and measure, which means that also middle management will be involved, and they will be able to have an impact to improve their initiatives. And the employees will feel involved, not just reporting, but actually feel involved in what impact they are doing, what progress they are doing. And based on that, they will feel more involved in the execution. Exactly as MIT showed that 82% actually would like to contribute and help the company to do the strategy execution on time. If we're looking into, let's see here, if we're looking into a more practical part of this, so if we compare the last 10 or actually 30 years into the new trend, which is right now, and the new trend is growing quite fast based on COVID, but also a lot of other disruptions that is happening on the market, and also an age generation shift on CEOs and presidents and those type of executives. And this is how it has been, as we spoke about before. And if we try to break down this in a more practical way, this is more what's common today. So if you think about what we spoke about before, we should not just focus here where we should be in 3 or 4 years from now in the strategy. We should go back and rewind, so we have the business plan showing what we should focus on the next 6 or 12 months. And this is not only money, in this example, improved profit from $250 to $320 million before 2025. This is actually new initiatives, as I said before, new businesses coming on top of what's already working really well in the company. So when we do this from 250 to 320 million before 2025, in this example, that is narrowed down to this business plan that we should try to achieve 10 million in increased profit during this period of 12 months. And once again, you can have several most important goals. I'm using one most important goal just in order to make this understandable and easier to understand. So when the CEO have decided together with the executive team that, this is what we should go for, this are the financial goals, in this case, $10 million in improved profit for this year. Normally, the CEO don't have an application. So this is normally verbally, some manager are taking a part of the strategy and bring it to their team or further out in the organization. So it takes a long time, long calendar time or a long timeline until the people down here, the people are actually having an impact. It takes too long time to get down here, because it's when the people down here starting to do more correct activities, supporting the initiatives, and those initiatives starting to accelerate and have an impact of increased profit in this example. That's what we would like to achieve. And if the time until these people are involved is too long, then of course this will be delayed. It's common that the CEO don't have an application or is using applications like Excel or something, and Excel is not so stimulating for people down here. And it's also common that companies are using quite cheap applications, if I could say that, which is not done for accelerated strategy execution. And what is really strange is that in some cases, the CEO is not involved when they choose an application for doing this type of execution. I'm sure that if it was a financial or CFO, I think that person would not choose one of those products in order to solve the business problem. And that's exactly the same, that more CEOs or presidents or business unit managers should really be involved in choosing the product they need in order to solve this execution problem. So this is what happens. We had this big example on the top, $250 to $320 million within 3 years. We have broken that down according to this focus on the business plan. So now we have within 12 months that we should increase profit from 250 to 260 million. So this is the goal. We don't believe anything will happen so we will have more activities. We will have a lot of things happening. We need some change management and so on in the organization. But after 6 months, we believe that we will actually be able to measure the improved profit. However, this is normally what happens. And this is a little bit oversized, of course. But during this time, we have been discussing, we have maybe done some to-dos, but those to-dos are normally delayed because we're so stressed in the day-to-day business. So this is normally what happens. After 12 months, we have almost not got any improved profit from what we were focusing on according to the strategy. And the reason for that is that they don't use an application, or they use many different applications, or it could also be that the application needs to be technically adjusted, which takes calendar time or decrease the timeline. It could also be that you need a lot of consulting in order to change or add business rules to the execution. So if we move over now to this new trend, applications for accelerated strategy execution, as I said before, it's more and more CEOs based on generation shift, but also based on that disruption is happening and growing so fast, that actually start to use an application which is done for the execution when it's business critical for the company. And if we look into this typical customer, it's normally used, of course, of the CEO and all manager and especially employees. The employees can't just report in Excel or something similar. The employees must be helped to release time. They must get help in how, and they must get other type of stimulations in order to also focus on what's important today. The CEO, if the CEO is not using the application, then of course it will not work. The application must be easy to use. Think about that this is a mid-sized organization or a larger organization. If the application is perfect for maybe 2 or 3% of people who wants to be able to do whatever they want with an application, it's probably more than 90% that will feel that the application is too difficult to use. So the application must be easy to use. Then the financial goals, as you can see on the top here, they must be integrated and measurable together with the initiatives, as we spoke about before. And they must be integrated with the activities. And it must be possible to measure the correct activities that they really have an impact on the initiatives, and that those initiatives really have an impact on the financial goals that belongs to the strategy. We recommend, and many with us recommend, that this is combined with a 15 minutes acceleration meeting per week. And that works like on this level, you have an acceleration meeting for 50 minutes, then 15 minutes later on this level, and then in the end you have an acceleration meeting on the top level, the CEO and the executive team. You could also say that all methodologies and all these type of products they are measuring the MIG, the most important goal, or the outcome, as we spoke about before, in this example, improved profit, but they're also able to measure the input, the key activities. So it's lead and measure. And this really helps the company to not measure on outcome, but measure on the activities and the input. It's also important, to have a business case, not only for the CEO, but also for the team leaders and the employees that are further out, so they could see which impact their activities has on increased revenues or decreased cost or quality that is transformed to money in one way or another. We spoke about the sprints before. The system must include sprints, that's correct sprints, suggest different sprints, make sure that they are not delayed, and make sure that they are aligned. It must be some sort of support in the application that it's don't stop somewhere. So it's make sure that the speed, the timeline is minimized between the CEO and the employees. And you must have some sort of library and automated intelligence, so you could help people with how, especially how, which activities should I focus on, and how could I do them better, and so on. So that's what we call a business support. The system don't include help how to use the application. It includes help to do my job in a better way. This is an example from a bank in 5 countries. You can see that they had a very low profit, and they had that for several years. And they also lost market shares because disruption, actually, because it was a competitor that came out with a new product line and some new services. And just to give you an example, when they define what they need to be successful with, in this case, new services and new products, even better than the competitors, they did the sprints, and the CEO defining the sprints, then down to middle management, down to the employees, and then up again was 6 weeks. So it's a true top-down, bottom-up process, which only took 6 weeks. And the solution is, of course, that they need some sort of application which is done only for accelerated strategy execution. It must be used by the CEO and all managers and all the employees. They used consultants in order to facilitate what are our most important goals. How could we do the prioritization in a right way? Took 2 hours, and then you do the same on the next level. So after 2 weeks, the CEO, the level 2 and level 3 were up and accelerating, which means they were in the application, they did their activities, they had an impact on the initiatives, and they did the 15 minutes acceleration meeting per week. And then it goes down for each level here. So after 6 weeks, all countries and all employees were involved in this. And the result or the investment is the licenses, of course, but it's also an investment to have this acceleration meeting 15 minutes per week. No one wants one more meeting, but our experience is that if you don't have this meeting 15 minutes per week, you will fail. So if you have a follow-up meeting once per month or even once per quarter, you have no chance to do what we call accelerated strategy execution. Results, measurable, and that's important, measurable profit. So already within 6 months, it went up to with 4 million, and then revenue went up, also measurable, and also the measurable acceleration. All the activities that are done here, which is the lead and the input, that is what this type of systems are really motivating and driving, and the result is of course increased revenue profit, but it's actually more focusing on the activities that are needed and the acceleration of those activities. And if that happens in all different teams within several countries, then of course you get financial improvements as well. The employee satisfaction scores goes up as well, because these people they are more involved, they release time, and they also feel more, they get more proud. The self-confidence is going up because they are not just reporting activities, but they also have their own business case. They could say, we help the company to save 1 million or 100K or whatever, or we help to take away a problem that before costed the company money. So that, of course, gives us a better understanding for money and the impact we could have, which helps the company. And if it's a disruption, which actually happened this company based on COVID, it only took 2 weeks until the decision here to change and do one change. You don't have to change the whole company, but you change something based on disruption, until it came down here and people here changed what their activities and their initiatives, what they were focusing on. So if you compare this with how it has been the last 10 or 20 years, it's a huge difference. And some of you may think, oh, this is too good to be true, but actually not only us, but other vendors within this industry normally have proof, because the CEO have been involved. So it's normally a pre-done business case, it's a measurable acceleration and so on. So most of our competitors and ourselves have financial proofs from all customers. And this is what happens. You could get started very fast to line up the initiatives, the most important goals, put that into the system, start with acceleration meeting. Already after 3 months, you could have a measurable acceleration from all inputs and all different teams. And then after 6 months, of course, then you have an even better acceleration. And for example, 5 million, but you have some sort of measurable profit. If it's 5 million or 3 million, I don't know. And in this case, instead of the $10 million we wanted from this strategy and strategy execution, in this case, it was 15 million as an example, but it's actually very common that the money is bigger than the goal, because when you get this acceleration, then the results are coming quite fast. So I have an offering to you, or a friend, or someone who is a CEO, a large business unit manager, or a president. Needs to be a quite big company in order to do this, but this is the offering that I will do, or someone in my organization will do an assessment test on you or that business friend. As I said before, 32 questions. It's validated also with research from McKinsey, MIT, and Gartner. And the answer after that test, after 45 minutes, based on the answers from you or that person, will be the likelihood to have success with your execution on time. And it will go through how strong is your strategy, what is your ability to change, what is the breakdown, how actionable is it measurable, how is the performance management in the company, and so on. And you remember this one, we will also find out and help you to find out, you know, if you're perfect in this area, or if you maybe need help from us to fill in the initiative, maybe do facilitation to fill in the initiatives, so you don't have this gap between the goals and actually being able to reach the goals on time. So this is what we saw before as average. You know, we will help you in that case to fill this gap, so you get up to 100%, because without correct initiatives, managers and employees can never focus on the correct activities. So that's absolutely necessary. So with that said, it's very fast. I hope you got a good understanding of how it has been and how the market is changing right now. And once again, disruption is increasing dramatically. So I really recommend every one of you to, even if you're not doing something exactly like us, to really start to think about, you know, the goals, the financial goals, the initiatives and the activities, and how you could accelerate those. Thank you.
Well, really nice job. And I, for one, appreciate the level of detail and effort in that presentation. Quite impressive. And I thank you very much for that.
Thanks.
So, I will also say, and I give you credit, I didn't know you were going to be able to get through all those slides in exactly the time you did it. So I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
A quick comment, and then we'll go. We seem to have a bunch of questions here, which I'm grateful for. Also, if you have additional questions or want to ask a question, please go into the Q&A section now. Let me first say that to see the statistics you mentioned very early on in the presentation, Ulf, is some of those are quite scary to see those percentages that you mentioned. And there's a few questions here that may align to those also. I don't think it's too big of a surprise that many organizations have trouble with strategy, but when you see the actual numbers, that's a different story. So good to see that, although it needs major improvement. Let's move to some of the questions. Do you believe that most leaders truly understand what strategy is? Great question.
This is a very good question. I think they understand what strategy is, but they have different opinion about it. But I would say that what's totally shocking me is that many don't care about it. You know, it have been for so many years where companies doing the strategy, they take time, they want people to fill in different type of papers or whatever it is, and nothing is followed up. So I think something which is tough is there's so many out there which believes that strategy, that's you know, that's very, it's not even secondary in the same time as you know, the shareholder value, improved revenue and profit, exactly what the board and the CEO is measured on. So, but that's a good question.
Yeah. Great. Here's an interesting question. I have attended many executive strategic planning meetings that wound up being goal-setting meetings. Is this a common experience?
Yeah, that's, you know, I got some negative feedback on my red line that nothing happened this year. It's actually, I think that whoever asked that question have been in those type of meetings. Nothing. I mean, this is the case. This is a reality. 90% of the cases. Absolutely correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's another interesting one. You mentioned that only half of an executive team can list their company's top 3 initiatives. How do you propose a leader instills something as simple as goals, priorities, strategy, etc., to make them lived and real in the organization? This probably touches on a few different areas of this question. You would almost expect.
No, but it's a quite big question. But let me tell you one thing. Most CEOs are not talking about increased profit and revenue with their executives, and especially not with the employees. And that needs to be changed. So if the CEO or president is not strong enough to say, hey, that is important, but this is most important, and then this will fail. So that's why it's always should be increased revenue, market share, profit. It could be other things as well, but when you're too soft taking that away, it's a mess. Don't even start the execution.
Yeah, and it seems extremely surprising that those that are sworn to support and guide and initiate these priorities, these initiatives in the organization, can't actually name all of them. It's the integrative nature, I would think, that would be important to the prioritization also. We see this in the boardroom, Ulf, as it relates to the board believing that everybody in the organization understands the values, vision, and mission throughout the organization. And that percentage comes back extremely low when it's actually tested in the organization. It's quite important to the success of every level of the organization and to the services and products they provide.
Yes, it is. But it's also very common today that especially OKR, objective key results, are starting from bottom up as a freeware with different teams, but it's not connected. If you're going to have success with the strategy execution, it must be a top-down, bottom-up process. So if you start from the bottom with some test, it's more way to become more proactive as a way of living. It takes also calendar time, and the timeline gets delayed, but it will not work. So I like OKR, I really believe in it, but it has to be a little bit more business oriented.
Understood. Okay, let's see what else we have here. I think this question is relating back to one of the earlier slides where you showed the alignment of strategy, defined strategy, and priorities. The question is, why do less people agree on priorities in the strategy as compared to having a clearly defined strategy? I guess they're trying to make that correlation into.
I think it's difficult. It's so many different levels. If you are on a board level, or if you're a consultant specialized in this, or if you're a CEO or executive team, you're still on a high level. You can't define it. You can't be too clear about everything because you don't have that know-how. So you could only be clear about the initiatives on the level where your know-how is and your experience is, and then trust the rest of the organization that they actually will add based on their experience, or you could have this built into the product as well. When it comes to the prioritizations, I didn't say that before. I think we are one of few that are saying that the prioritizations has to be done only based on money and calendar time, or the timeline. It could be something politically, something that has an impact on the culture or on the shareholder value, but it normally should be money and calendar time or timeline. Otherwise, how could you and I prioritize? You will feel that yours is more important than mine.
That's right.
We will never reach a satisfaction where you will help us based on what's my idea. So it needs to be very clear rules and for how to prioritize.
Yeah, great. This is a good question. You mentioned an acceleration meeting. What exactly is this, and what is accomplished during this meeting?
Yeah, good question. The 15 minutes acceleration meeting is that they start from the bottom with the team leader and the 6, 7 or whatever employees, and they are very much going through what financial impact did we have last week, or what have we reached the last 3 months, and also which activities did we agree to, and what is the outcome from those activities. So it's not only activities, because that gets too boring. So you must be able to connect it to top and bottom lines. So you understand, why should I spend this 15 minutes week after week? The other part of it is then to take commitment for the next week. And to answer your question, it's a positive group pressure, that you are doing something that you are not really, it's not the day-to-day what you are paid for. You're doing something for increasing or improving the company or the team tomorrow, but you do it today. So this is a way for you to show as well that, I've done my part. I committed to this last week. I've done at least that this week. So it's very much a strong, positive group pressure as a team. What could we do?
And the consistency, of course, I would imagine is important in that also. Yeah,
I would say that, the consistency doing this once per week. As I said, that's an investment because you need to be a tough CEO and really good to explain why. Why should I spend 15 minutes per week?
Yeah.
If I understand why this is important, I have no problems. But of course, otherwise, I would like to do it once per year, maybe once per quarter.
Exactly. Very good. I have a personal question for you, and it's the following. What got you into this field, and why are you so passionate about it?
I actually got into this. I had this. I was thinking about this a lot, but I've always been working with CEOs and management teams and so on. And I had this. I saw so many strategies, PowerPoints. Even if McKinsey or someone was involved, it was a great analysis which was done. When it came to what we had to do, it was very thin. It was quite unclear. But actually, the KPIs and the financial goals was normally clear, and also the timeline until reaching that. So my dream was, wow, if I could create a product that actually could accelerate the execution of this, and that's what I have done. I thought it was going to take 6 or 7 years. I'm up to 12 years now, so I'm a failure.
Well, I would say otherwise. I think the product is amazing, and I really appreciate the offer to our IBDC.D graduates and current registrants, and I really hope they take you up on that also to see how that can really accelerate their environments. We go into a lot of detail also on strategy and governance and the interrelationship of those two areas in our program, so it's a perfect fit. Perfect. I see a bunch of thank yous coming in here as well. Ulf, great job today. Thank you so much. We are exactly on time. Again, great session. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for having me here. And thank you, everyone, for attending. Thanks so much.
Great. We'll speak soon. Bye now.